So I'm indeed the technology officer for Belgium and Luxembourg. So I'm usually dealing with technology policies in these two countries. So I'm not a specialist of EU matters. So I apologize in advance for a terrible mess I can do with the EU names and agencies and regulation, which will certainly happen. So why am I here today? So basically, I've spent something like 3 years working with KBC, so one of the largest banks in Belgium, and the Belgian National Bank, in getting the approval of the Belgian regulator for KBC to move to the cloud. They've moved 35,000 people to the cloud. So during these 3 years, the National Bank of Belgium has made a really thorough examinations of all the issues surrounding the use of the public cloud in the financial sector. So that's I've taken a number of learnings out of that, which I've modified and I've adapted a number of things that Microsoft is doing. So I'm speaking here from the standpoint of the technology provider, which is very different. And as you said, technology is only one part of the equation. It's probably the easiest one to figure out what we can do and what could be implemented. So basically, from our side, the problem we are faced with is this one. So basically, the financial sector is asking us to provide technology which would allow them to be present everywhere, anytime, with their customers, with all of their customers on any kind of platform. That's basically the challenges they are asking us to solve. It means that from a security standpoint, it changes completely the picture. So instead of moving instead of being in an environment where everything is controlled with firewalls and defenses outside the shell concept of protection, we are in fact forced and mandated to provide them something that will be completely open, with data that are public, confidential, internal, who will be on the same infrastructure, which is accessible by anyone from any places and with any kind of platform. This dreaded acronym of bring your own device, which means also that on us is asking us to solve a number of different policy issues. So starting with the transparency. So what do we do, and how do we operate so that they can gain confidence in what we do? That was a major part of the discussion with the Belgian National Bank. To some compliancy requirement, because, well, if we are working in the public cloud, or if a number of things are happening on our platform, it means that we must help them match the compliancy requirement of the regulator. And so, of course, the two obvious ones are the data privacy and the cybersecurity. So from a technology supplier standpoint, it completely changes the picture of what we should propose. And well, the main requirement we get is it possible? Can you deliver us an environment that will be unhackable? And so, well, you've seen it on the. So this is the unhackable environment. It does not exist, in fact. So it has been mentioned already. So by Darren. So the question. So you said that in the future we'll move to a concept where we will assume that there is an attacker inside. In fact, basically, on our side, we assume already that the attacker is inside. This is a shift we made 3 or 4 years ago in the design of our cloud. And it is structured with the idea that there is someone inside. And then the question is, what do you do when there is someone inside? How do you remain secure, knowing that there is someone who penetrated all the defenses? It doesn't mean that we have stopped investing on the external protection. We just keep investing in that. But so your number was something around 60%. So our investment is 50% on protecting the outer shell and 50% detecting and containing and cleaning the environment, which is not done by cleaning, by simply rebuilding it. So it has made it has required a lot of changes in the way we operate to make that possible. And these changes are slowly percolating to the more end user environment. So this means that, from our point, we have a number of challenges to address. The first one is the threat landscape is constantly changing. With member states, with countries having now a cyber warfare policy. I mean, these countries and something like 60 countries have declared that they have a cyber warfare policy. These countries are in fact developing malware. And you know how easy it is to identify when a malware is identified, to reverse engineering it and then publish the principle. It's happening every day. So basically we have states doing research and development for the attackers. And the attackers are now using very advanced secret services type of technology simply because of that. So we are faced with a really constantly changing landscape in an environment, again, from a technology supplier standpoint, where we are operating, our customers are operating in multiple countries. So I said I was involved in the KBC project. We spent 3 years in Belgium investigating the whole structure of the use of the cloud for KBC, and then they proceeded with the rollout, and they are still proceeding with the rollout. We are now almost 5 years after the start of the project, and we only got the approval of one of the regulators in Asia for the use of the cloud. So the entire work that has been on here is in fact absolutely not valid for the other countries. So even in Europe, other regulators have questioned what has been made and have re-examined everything. And so not to mention what is happening in Asia where they are. So the risk assessment framework, the procedure, the way we can look, the way the financial sector can look at these technology challenges is something that is extremely critical for a technology supplier. We need, in order to be competitive and in order to have competitive pricing, of course, we need someone that is commonly agreed by most of the regulators. It's the same with the security requirement. It varies a lot from, so simply in the two countries that I'm working with, in Luxembourg, which requires that the encryption keys resides in Luxembourg, to Belgium, which allows the use of the public cloud. It's a completely different way of looking at that, and this is really stopping the development and the adoption of the cloud. These multiple regulations are indeed a very complex challenge. And in this area, and so I'm putting that in the challenge, it's the dialogue with the technology suppliers. So we are constantly monitoring the security landscape. We are constantly thinking about how we can change this landscape, or we can adapt the technology platform so that we just move the attack surface of the potential hackers. So it means that we are thinking probably 2-3 years ahead of that. So when we put this technology on the market, usually it's very late to think about the regulation, about the framework in which we operate. So a new dialogue is absolutely mandatory with the regulating authorities. And so to mention my first contact with the Belgian National Bank, my first contact 4 or 5 years ago was extremely short. I called them because KBC asked me to call them, and the answer, when I asked them, well, can we meet and discuss that? The answer was, oh, no, we don't speak to technology suppliers. There's no need for us to speak to you. And then it stopped, which is, of course, is not the right way. So KBC pushed and insisted, and so finally we started engaging and discussing with the regulator. But this remains a problem. This regulator in Asia, which we have just solved now together with KBC, it was exactly the same answer that we got in the beginning when we wanted to anticipate that. So the dialogue with technology suppliers needs to take a different form. It needs to take something that is much more forward-thinking, that is much more trying to anticipate what technology can do and how the technology can fit into the operation of the financial sector. So I will conclude with that. So based on these challenges and what is likely ahead of it, one thing that we must not forget is the future is the only way forward. This technology, it's cheap, it's easy to implement, it's cheaper than the others, so it will happen. We have now an unbelievable amount of developers in the world, so they are coming with new ideas, they are coming with new applications that are running on smartphone, that are running on the cloud. Programming the cloud is very easy. With 10 or 12 euro a month, you can just start programming your application, which will run in a public cloud and be accessible by everyone. So new entrants will happen, and not only the small ones. So I'm personally completely convinced that in the next 5 years, companies like Facebook or Amazon will completely change the payment landscape. They are working on that. They have the cloud infrastructure, which would be required just to propose something like a point of sales application that could just drive a lot of the financial transaction, retail transactions to them, and this can completely change their role. So in this area, we need already, so thinking with this 3 years gap that we have between what we develop and when it comes on the market, we need to think a lot of different scenarios. So these are a few of them. The digital intimacy is of course very important. The financial sector banks are closing the agencies. They cannot afford to continue to pay them. So the intimacy that is happening in the agency will have to happen in the screen through some digital way. So this means a totally different way of gathering information, of storing information about the users, and the same with the online advisor. There is already a French insurance company which has developed a proven engine which makes the decisions and the recommendation of the online advisor completely demonstrable and auditable. but it's the only one I know. So in this environment where customers will rely on an advice that is given by an algorithm, we must also think about how can we check the validity of this algorithm and make them auditable. So these are a number of questions that are already open today. We are thinking about that, and we'll need to anticipate these discussions. So this is not about the Microsoft slide showing what we have done. Basically, what I also want to leave you with is that the technology landscape, it's not stable. It's changing. It is changing because, well, we have more computing power every day, because we learn a lot, because the landscape is changing. So we've made a lot of changes. We will not stop in there. And again, from a regulatory perspective, it's very important to understand what the next step will be, because this is the moment in 3 years from now where we will need legislation and technology to be on sync, so that we can just take as soon as possible the benefits of the competitiveness that technology can provide.